Good morning. My name's Julie, recovering overeater. Firstly, thank you, Debbie, for inviting me and for hosting, and for all those that have done the readings so far. And thank you, Austin, for timing. So I guess the place to start for me would be the beginning. I believe I was a self-soother really before I came into the world. I was a thumb sucker, so there was clearly a need for soothing as soon as I came into this world. And that was progressive when I was I think my earliest memory is really when I was going to nursery, and that beating heart, that fear, going into that setting. And I do remember that when I felt anxious, I could not eat. I could not eat. My stomach would be racing. And I remember my mother just desperately trying to get me out the door. And in order to do so, she would give me items which contained my red food. And certainly not suitable for breakfast going before school, but she was doing the best she could. Something that would normally be confined to Christmas Day, and it didn't matter if you ate it from the crack of dawn. So I was out the door and I was dropped off. And although it took the edge off, the nerves and the anxiety was definitely still there. And I was so self-conscious, even as a little one, I just didn't feel I fitted in. And I was conscious, as that progressed. I went into school and into primary one, and they thought there was a problem. I wasn't learning to read. I wasn't progressing like everyone else. So again, that sense of there's something wrong started, I guess. There's an issue here. And I was kept back in primary one because I was slow in learning to read, and they discovered that there was something called dyslexia, which no one really knew much about then. So I was set back, which meant me separating from the people that I'd found comfort in. So there was a couple of wee friends that, I had, but that meant I now wasn't with them and I was now with new people. So that was terribly frightening again. So the thing that got me in the door was the same thing, that red item, and then I'd get more at break time and more at lunchtime, and that was just the norm. And after school, I would go to my nana's house, and inevitably she would have more of the same. And I didn't recognise it as being a problem. It was just a thing that got me by. And the same thing, in the same way, if that wasn't available, I was sucking my thumb. And in fact, I was told to stop sucking my thumb in class. So, if I had other things to have in my pocket, that helped. So anything I could do to fit in, to make me feel like I fitted in, was something I would do. And so I progressed, and obviously as I became a teenager, I then found other substances. But the whole core issue for me was I had a disease of dis-ease. And I know that now. I know that from the language of the runes, but I didn't know that then. And I would do anything to just sedate the feelings. I didn't like feeling anxious. Something to mention as well was in my earliest time, my father sadly died when I was 2, and the circumstances around that were pretty tragic. And I think that obviously, had an effect as well. So my mother had moved on, and by the time I was 5, so that sort of entering school age, already had that anxiety. And my mother met someone else, and I didn't like him. And I maybe would have rejected anyone. It could have been the absolutely best father in the world, but I did not like him, and he was not my daddy. And so any restrictions that he brought in felt unfair, unjust, and I was justified in my resentment. But that resentment soon grew into a real deep-seated hatred. And when my younger brother came along, who's 6 years younger than me, I just felt like I didn't fit in. Now, I did have an older brother. He was a very strong character, and he knew how to get the attention. And that inevitably normally meant by mocking me, shaming me, laughing at me. And it was always very funny to everyone else, whatever it was he was saying. And I couldn't stop it, and he was so quick. He's so quick. Thank goodness that's not the case now, but yeah, he was so quick. And I stopped, I stopped trying to talk at the table. And in the classroom, I stopped putting my hand up because inevitably my answer was wrong. And so I felt shamed and I felt wrong. And that just progressively got worse.
That
Thank you so much. So in terms of my self-image, I never felt like I fitted my own skin. I always felt I was the tubby one. I hated gym. I'll do anything to get out of it. If I was really feeling anxious, I would go to the school nurse and I would get comfort there because I felt nurtured. She was lovely. So I was very good at pretending there was something wrong with me if I needed to get out of something that was just getting a bit too difficult. So basically that was my childhood, and that was progressive. And as I've said, I went into all sorts of other substances, but each and every one of them led to the food, because I would have, if I was smoking a substance, I would get, go into binge eating. If I was drinking, I would have the binge eating foods when I was hungover, and that was just progressive. And the weight was terrible, and I was always trying every Monday, to start with self-control and gain some ground on losing weight, and it inevitably didn't happen. So fast forward, I did what some people will call in other rooms a geographical. I left Edinburgh and I moved up to the Highlands of Scotland. I got a great job, and everything was going to be new and fresh. And I met my husband and fell pregnant, had a miscarriage, which was really awful. And I thought, right, well, that was going to be the thing that I'd missed again, So we tried again. We got married, and I fell pregnant. I actually found out I was pregnant on my honeymoon. But the weight gain through pregnancy was progressive, obviously, and I just felt like I was beyond control. And then, but the blessing of my son was the counter thing. I bonded well, and I loved my son, but just the diet, so yo-yo diets. I came to a crisis point. My husband unfortunately didn't realise he was meant to stop dating, and that clearly was a problem. And so when that became evident, I entered into a real place of grief. And because I was in grief, and because I was incredibly anxious, the weight fell off me, and people noticed that because I just couldn't eat. So I wasn't conscious of restricting, but my body just, I couldn't conceive of anything. And the food was not going to be the thing that would comfort me. Nothing was. And then after that, then what happened was I got a call to say that my nana, who was my precious one that was really loving, had taken ill and was not going to make it. And I'd had a friend who had shared her faith with me. It wasn't religion. It was walking around Lochaneelan. And she would share that, she could see the struggles I was having if I was willing to pray to a God of my understanding. Then I think that God would step into my circumstances, and that God would be a father to me. And I liked what she heard, but I also resented a lot of that advice, because I didn't like advice. My stepfather gave me advice a lot, and I didn't like advice from other people. So, I smiled, and I liked her, and I kept going back. And as a result, I kept hearing more of the same message. So when my nana suddenly got ill, and it was evident I was going to lose her, she was 93, it was her time, I dropped to my knees and I cried out. And I did experience a breakthrough, and all the other substances were miraculously taken, but the food wasn't, and the food wasn't in my peripheral vision. I just didn't recognise that it was an issue. I recognised the weight was an issue, and I recognised that the way I looked was an issue, because that caused me all sorts of problems. But I didn't actually pray about it. I didn't realise I could pray about it. So as a result, I just kept going with the yo-yo diets. And then when I did another move, my marriage inevitably came to an end, and I did meet someone about a year and a half, 2 years later, and he's lovely, and I'm blessed, and he's been a lovely father to my son. We moved away from the area, because in that area everyone knew me, everyone knew about the affairs. We needed our fresh start, and we moved down further nearer Perth. And I started attending a place of worship that I still go to. Somebody I met recognised, just through my chat, through my own disease and my comments about myself, that I had an issue. And she invited me to a face-to-face OA meeting just before COVID. And I was absolutely blown away. Suddenly I felt like I'd found my people. I'd never felt like that before. I felt like I belonged. I felt like it was
10
okay to
minutes gone.
share. Thank you so much. And so I shared, and I found a group of people that I could trust, and I started working the steps of recovery. I did struggle initially to find a sponsor, and I think I sought out somebody who was very strict, who was like the critical parent, which was my mother. And that didn't work so well for me, because there was a lot of rigidity. And some people need that. So I'm not saying that's a wrong thing, but for me, it was the wrong thing. And then what happened was COVID happened, and everyone was put into that situation. And a lot of the things that caused me anxiety were therefore taken away. Now, you would think, actually, when I'm about to tell you what I do, I was a carer, so I was working through COVID. But being of service to others has always been the thing that gets me out of myself. So I had to get up, I was in routine, I was still going to work, I was showing up for people. My role had changed from a hands-on carer to a one-to-one pastoral carer, and I was going into the rooms and I was giving people time to share, and I was offering support in whichever way they needed that. And although I had found my own faith, I was very respectful of the fact that not everyone did, and I knew how that was, having not had my own. So I loved people where they were at, and I got through COVID, and I was abstinent all through COVID. But after COVID, obviously opened up, those people, places and things came back into my life that had been not there. And it was progressive, and I piled the weight on. I piled it on really fast. But I want to get to the solution. I recognised there was a problem. I started going to OA Zoom meetings during COVID, but I struggled with the connection on Zoom. That was a difficulty for me. But I did keep going, and I did find another sponsor, and I earnestly, worked my way through the steps. But life still shows up, and I still have times where, obviously there are struggles. But I found my abstinence again when I started to earnestly work the steps. And for me, that looked like having a sponsor I could talk to, that I could work through some of my daily issues. But one of the things that I did struggle with was when I was on the OA meeting, I didn't hear an awful lot of people talk about their struggles. I heard a lot of people talking about the solution. And when I put down the sugar and I found my abstinence, which is April 2024, the feelings came up. Boy, oh boy, did they come up. Really, really grief-like feelings. And I struggled to find my voice. I struggled to share on this meeting. The don't put the hand up thing was real, the anxiety. Thank you. And so for me, my solution was to go to face-to-face meetings, which I now do, to continue coming to this meeting, to make outreach calls for anyone that's new here that might not feel comfortable. Do it anyway. What I found was by picking up the phone and phoning a fellow, I was able to convey where I was right then. And if I didn't have enough time to share a great deal of time, I'd stick to the thing that was giving me difficulty. And by sharing, by going to face-to-face meetings, by having people that I could phone and outreach to, what that did is give me a sense of a community that understood me, that I felt safe with. And there are people on this meeting who I do outreach with, and there are people I meet in my face-to-face meetings. I'm abstinent because I've put in the work. I'm aware that I need to work my programme of recovery. I need to show up. I need to be honest about where I'm at. I need to stop shoving down feelings and express them. And for my emotional sobriety, which is what's so important to me, I need to be honest about where I'm at and speak it out. That helps me on a day-to-day basis. And I only have the day I'm in, and I can make one decision and pick up. If I don't do that, I only have the day I'm in. So I was encouraging anyone that's new, a newcomer, you're the most important person, and I'm speaking to you right now. Make contact with people in this group, or go to face-to-face meetings. Find a sponsor. Be honest. Work your way through the steps. It's not a race. You don't need to do it 100 miles an hour, which is what I thought initially. I've been living the steps, and I'm now on my second round of doing them. And, you know, at the end of the day, that's the thing that's helped me stay abstinent. And I just thank you for this opportunity to share, and I'll pass. Thank you, Austin.